Welcome to the Enlightenment Podcast to our listeners and viewers around the world. In these pivotal times, we feel that it's vital to engage in some meaningful dialogue about Palestine, to provide some deeper context and insight into what's going on, to highlight Palestine's rich traditions, history, and culture. And this is, we feel, something that is not often reflected in mainstream legacy media. With that in mind, we have an amazing guest joining us today. But I wanted to take a minute just to mention the renewed bombing of Gaza that is happening by the colony of Israel. And this is as of 19th March. Again, we have the deaths of hundreds of civilians, mainly women and children and men who are not in combat, over just the past few days. And we're seeing again violations in international law from Israel by cutting off food supplies, ostensibly using starvation as a negotiating tactic or collective punishment, and the cutting off of Gaza's electricity and therefore its water desalination, which is a strategy to deprive Palestinians even of water, in addition to the food supplies that have already been cut for several weeks. The settler colony of Israel has a documented history of breaking ceasefires, including recently in Lebanon, where they attacked almost every day of the so-called ceasefire there. And because mainstream media rarely makes that culpability clear, we wanted to mention it here today. That's me off my soapbox. Today, I'm happy to say that we are joined by our very dear friend, Sawsan Asfari, to discuss the importance of Palestinian representation through film, education, and the quest for a just solution. Sawsan holds a degree in political science and journalism. She's a film producer, a philanthropist, a human rights advocate, and she serves as the executive director of the Galilee Foundation. She's also co-founder and a trustee of the Asfari Foundation and a board member of the Welfare Association and the US MEP. Sawsan, welcome. It's such a pleasure to have you here with us.
Thank you so much, Shamim, and thank you for having me. And I miss you both.
So do we, back in London, hopefully soon. I'm going to start, Sawsan, with our usual crazy question, which is, how do you know Hanan? How do you know Sawsan?
Well, Sawsan and I met through a mutual friend in London when we were babies, in our 20s, we still are babies. And I've always admired Sawsan for her dedication, all that she does, and we'll delve into what she does into this podcast. So, Ahlan Sawsan, as Shamim said, welcome. And to start with, we miss you too, of course. And could you start with sharing your family's history in Palestine leading to their expulsion and just the background?
Okay. My mother's family comes from Nablus. My mother's Palestinian, my father is Lebanese. But in the days of his father, the Bekaa Valley used to be part of Greater Syria. So he died saying Bekaa is for Syria. And we're like, no, it's Lebanon now. So, even we couldn't agree on the geography at home. But my mother's family was in Nablus. My grandfather, he was in trading. And actually, he had two partners. One was Palestinian and one was a Jewish Palestinian. And then, unfortunately, when the Nakba happened in 1948, it became very difficult to stay connected, and part of the family ended up being driven into Jordan, and the other part of the family actually stayed in Nablus. And then there are some parts of the family who ended up being refugees in the country. Like my mother was telling me stories of how they found one of the aunts living amongst the graves because she had to walk all the way from Lid to Jaffa, and it was a few hours walk, and so the family all got fragmented, but some stayed in Nablus and ended up in Jordan.
For those who don't know, Nablus has the best knafe in Palestine, so look it up.
Yeah, and it's beautiful. The first time I went, I was so surprised that I didn't imagine it's so green, and with all these green valleys and olive trees, and it's really a beautiful place.
I would suggest everyone hopefully visits Palestine soon.
Yeah.
And Sawsan, did you always want to produce films and engage in philanthropy? And how did this journey evolve?
I've always liked films, but it wasn't my absolute passion. When I was very young, I went to we lived in Sidon, which is in the south of Lebanon. And my school, the Sidon Evangelical School for Girls, was right next to Ain al-Helwi camp. And in those days, Israel would bomb Ain al-Halwi camp regularly. And every time there was a bombing, we would go afterwards into the camp to try and help and see what we can do. In those days, the camp wasn't so militant. It was mainly civilian refugees. Now I think it's much harder to get into. And also, we had the sirens going on in school every, once a month or once every few weeks, and we'd run down to the basement. And I remember the effect visiting the camps in those days had on me, and it makes you angry. It makes you want to strive for justice. And, on winter days, you start thinking of all those who are living in tin huts or are exposed. And you just come up, you grow up with wanting to have a better world, with wanting to have more justice in this world. And then I remember, every time we saw a Palestinian film, we'd come back home and play, Fidaiyin versus Israeli soldiers and all of that. And then when I came to London, my favorite pastime was going to Speaker's Corner and talking about the Palestinian cause and fighting with the Zionists. And then when I got married, went to live in Oman. Oman is a wonderful country, but, like all Arab countries, can't do independent charity, can't do any political lobbying. So I was working a little bit with the Arab Women's Association, where they, you took care of kids with, cerebral palsy, or doing just bits and pieces of charity work. But when we moved back to London in 1991, this was for me like a liberating moment, because I was able to join the Arab Labor Group, do lobbying with MPs, go on protests. And then with philanthropy, I met a wonderful Professor Colin Green. I don't know if you know him. He was running the foundation of Al-Quds Medical School. And he said to me, I need help. Would you like to help me? Initially, I said, yes, sure. And then a few months passed and I didn't respond. And then after I met him afterwards, and he said, you promised to help me. And I said, yes, I will. And, I always felt strongly about the Palestinian cause. So I joined the board of the FQMS, and we started fundraising, all over the world. And that was my journey, the beginning of my journey with philanthropy. And I stayed with the FQMS for about, I think, 6 or 7 years. And then I went on to, with political lobbying and charity and all this, I still found we're not able to make a dent in public opinion. It's a very limited niche. And at that time, I was good friends with Maya Sambar, who's also a producer, and she's an artist. And so we thought we'll create a small production company to promote the Palestinian cause through film. So this was my initiation into the production business, is to promote the Palestinian cause through film. And we started a company called Cactus World Films. But since then, Maya left. She's concentrating on her art, and I took the company alone, and now it's called Cocoon Films. New beginning.
Yeah, Maya's lovely.
Yeah, she's still a good friend.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, you talked about films to promote the Palestinian cause, I guess, to let more people be aware of what's going on in Palestine. And we'll talk about some of the individual films that you've produced in a bit. But, as a novelist and filmmaker, I've experienced this power that words and storytelling has, and images in particular, to shape perceptions, to move people to action. And I think a lot of that is about, for me, humanizing an abstract concept for people. So can you talk in general about the importance of having Palestinian representation in stories and film?
For sure, because, as we all know, forever the Arabs or Palestinians, not Palestine in particular, they're always portrayed as the bad guys or the terrorists or, the downtrodden or just the victims. No one was able to relate to us as people with stories and aspirations and dreams of whether you're a teenager dreaming of doing something special. And I find people relate mainly to storytelling, whether it's in film or on pages. And also the thing with books and films, you can reach millions of people in one go, versus lobbying away at one MP or going on a protest or whatever. And so many times when I'm reading a book, I'm thinking, this person can affect so many people's minds, and the same with films. And so this is why I thought it's very important to have Palestinian representation in films, that people can see you are not just a fighter with a keffiyeh, because for so long the narrative was Zionist based for the UK, for Europe, and for the US. And, you know, they have a huge machine behind them, whether it's state-funded films or state-funded cultural events, while really we are left, you know, on our own. So it's very important to have the representation, but it's also important for our people to support us in trying to achieve this representation, especially in films. You know, so many times, you know, the audience will come out of a film that we've screened and they say, oh, well done, make more, make more. Oh, sure, give me money to make more, you know? And so when you tell them, okay, we're working on this documentary, that's really important. Would you would you be interested? Suddenly it's like glazed over, you know, it's but still we keep at it. It's important. And there has been a shift. I mean, last time this Jewish producer came up to us and said, you people, you Pallywood. He called us Pallywood, as in Hollywood, Bollywood. And now, yes, we are almost an industry. And so it means we are having impact, and there is a shift in people's opinions. And the reason it's important, because so many times we get messages from people who've seen the film saying, I went home and looked up Gaza. Oh my God, I went home and, or my son wants to volunteer, or my daughter was crying her eyes out. She didn't know things are so bad. No matter how much people watch news or read papers, the effect that storytelling in film, especially in film, more than books even, has is just, I find, is very effective, and it's incredible.
100%. And also, I mean, I think you've had a big hand and role in Pallywood, as they call it, because you've given voices to many filmmakers, Palestinian filmmakers, and including my talented cousin Anne-Marie Jasser. You've supported her award-winning films. Let's talk about her films, for example, and why was it important for you to support her and her films, and how did it resonate with you?
The first time I met Anne-Marie Jasser, I think it was either through Maya or Jocelyn Barnes, who runs L'Ouverture, which is a small American company, and they do very good work as well. And I'm also a partner in that film. And Anne-Marie's film was called Salt of the Sea, and it was about the right of return. And it really resonated with me because it was a story of this young American Palestinian woman who comes back to Palestine, and there's people living in her, you know, parents' house, and you see the checkpoints, and you see the humiliation of everyday life that Palestinians go through. And actually, the film went on to win the Un Certain Regard category in Cannes, and it was such a wonderful moment for us because we all wore keffiyehs and went up on stage. And for us, that was like an amazing moment, and it really put Palestine on the map in Cannes. So Anne-Marie was quite pivotal in putting Palestine in Cannes, and the film, I think, went on to win, you know, quite a few prizes.
Yeah.
And since then, I love what Anne-Marie does. I think she's a very talented director and writer, and I like to be involved in all her films. She went on to do When I Saw You, which is about the revolution. And what I love about that film, it portrays women as equal in the fight, in the military fight, alongside the men. They're carrying guns, they're doing ambushes. So it's a wonderful story, almost of equality between the Palestinian genders. But it's also a bit disheartening because, you know, you have this young boy living in a refugee camp, not knowing when he'll be going back home. And unfortunately, you know, that's still the case of people waiting in refugee camps to go back home to Palestine.
You also did Wajib, which Shamim and I came to the premiere of that. That was a beautiful film.
Wajib was lovely because it was very nuanced. It showed the family wanting to, you know, distribute these cards, wedding invitations, but they have to do it on foot, you know, personally, and just shows the stories and the fabric of which the Palestinian society is woven out of. You know, it's Palestinian, it's Christian, it's Muslim, it's neighborly relations, and this dynamic between father and son, who are in real life father and son, Salih Muhammad Bakri. So it worked very well, but it also showed you the mixed emotions that you can have, where you are a friend to an Israeli, but the Israeli is a Zionist. At the same time, you need him, but is your friendship genuine? I mean, it has a quite complicated emotions of where, you know, you are a citizen of a country that hates you, but at the same time, you have to show loyalty, or you have to, take care of being not subordinate, but, playing nice to who is meant to be your Israeli friend, because you simply may need him one day.
Yeah, and for those who haven't seen the film, it's set in 1948 Palestine, so it has also those layers, as Sawsan said. So do watch all of Anne-Marie's films and Sawsan's films; they are amazing.
And Wajib is actually quite lovely because it has some humor in it.
Yeah,
so it's nice.
yeah,
I love Wajib, and I
have to
appreciate.
mention
Yeah.
Anne-Marie's new film, which she's still editing. It's
I
called
know.
Palestine 36. There's never been anything like it, because it's about the Palestinian uprising of 1936, 1939. And it's not so Israel in your face. It's about the British responsibility and how the British treated the Palestinians in Palestine, and what they did, and how we ended up here. So it's a fantastic film. It has a lot of truths and facts in it, but it's a feature film, and it's beautifully shot. And it also stars Saleh Bakri.
Saleh Bakri, and also I hope it can make it to Cannes in time. I know Anne-Marie is like busy editing.
I know, she's working hard on the edit.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. And Sawsan, can you also discuss The Idol, which is a moving film, and it's about overcoming all odds and the impact it had, because you're involved in that as well.
Sure. The Idol was a film directed by Hani Abu Asad, and it was based on the true story of Muhammad Assaf, who actually won the competition Arab Idol. They have like The Voice in the Arab world. They have the Arab Idol, where you go to singing competitions and you eventually win. And so it was a true story of his life. But he didn't really want to act in it, because he was worried that, what if he's not a good actor? What if it doesn't come out well? So it came out very well, actually, because he did come with us to, we premiered at Toronto Film Festival, and he was there to help us promote the film. And he's a wonderful young man. But The Idol, what I loved about it is that it showed these, Muhammad Assaf, when he was a child, how he dreamt of singing, how they dreamt of freedom, and the innocence that goes with being that young, him and his sister, and the everyday life and hardships that we think, oh my God, they live in such terrible conditions, but they are happy within that medium. But they still have their dreams and their aspirations, and they want to get there. And then it showed Muhammad Assaf's story, the struggle he went through to get to the competition in Egypt, and how he finally won. So that was at least, a happy moment, a Palestinian film with a happy ending for a change.
For a change, and a really like uplifting film, which is yeah. So I recommend people watch it as well.
Yes. But I mean, speaking of Hani Abu Asad, his film Omar, which I wasn't involved in, but I thought that was a very good depiction of the challenges that the Palestinian community has to go through, whether in the West Bank or in Israel. So that I would also recommend seeing that.
Definitely would put
Yeah,
it up.
it's an excellent film. It's an excellent film. And let me just say here at this point, as we talk about your films as a producer, as a director, I'm really excited to be interviewing another producer, because I'm married to one, and I know the pain and the stress and the work that has to go into getting anything made, let alone things that are not mainstream.
Up until The Teacher, which was, we filmed 3 years ago, I had it sort of easy. Like I would be either co-producer or executive producer. I would only produced documentaries, then Tomorrow's Freedom, about Marwan Barghouti. And so, being co-producer or executive producer, you have some responsibility. You get involved a bit in the editing, the casting, and raising the funds, all of that. But with The Teacher film, it was the first time I am a full-on producer for a feature film, and I was a producer. So I found that really difficult, even though, Osama Bawardi was Palestinian producer, Farah Nabilsi, who's writer, director, she was also a producer on the film, thank God. But it was really difficult, the process and the legals and the contracts and the raising funds and the opening accounts, and this being Palestine, so problematic, and the delays, and it was all really, really stressful.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about working with Farah, because we interviewed her last week actually on the podcast, and it's interesting how how that journey was your first full sole producer in a sense with her. I know she was producing as well.
Yeah.
No,
I mean, thank God I wasn't sole producer, because it's much harder than I thought. And Farah is really on top of things. And I mean, the way I know the way we started, unfortunately, she had approached me at a very bad time for me. She had sent me the script. I don't know whether she thought of me as to come in as producer or investor or whatever. And my brother had died a couple of months ago. It was COVID. I was in really bad shape. And I read the script and I loved it. And I'm like, I want to be involved. So that's how, it came, the journey with Farah came on. And so we went through the script, and then we applied for development with the BFI just to, tweak the script. It was already quite strong, but we just thought, it's good to have a BFI perspective on it. And that's when, the project took off, and it got done finally.
No, that's fantastic. And yeah, sorry, Hanan, go.
No, I'm just saying it's doing very well. And just sorry to interrupt, Shamim. Also, the Marwan Barghouti film, also 2 female sisters, writer directors, they supported also a wonderful documentary and story. We were there also for the premiere.
Yeah. I mean, with Tomorrow's Freedom, it's a special film, because I mean, I know with every Palestinian film we hope, it has a message, we hope it has an outreach. But with Tomorrow's Freedom, we are actually starting a campaign to free Marwan Barghouti, to free political prisoners. And this time, at a time when everyone's saying, who's going to run Gaza? Hopefully, if there's no ethnic cleansing of Gaza, who's going to be leading? And, we want to present the option that Marwan Barghouti is the logical leader for Palestine, because, okay, he's been in jail for 20 years, but when there were meant to be elections a few years ago, he won more than 60% of the vote. But then, the PA canceled the elections, unfortunately, because, they knew they were going to lose. So we're kicking off a campaign soon to free Marwan Barghouti. And hopefully, that I don't know if it will happen or not. But, this documentary is not just a documentary. It also is about a campaign to affect the prisoners and Marwan Barghouti.
I love that.
Yeah, what I loved about that documentary was it kind of, it told a different story, which here's a story of a potential hopeful vision for Palestine in the future through quite a visionary leader. He reminded me, my parents and grandparents are South African, of Nelson Mandela, and that kind of ability to kind of cross the bridges of different people in Palestine. And
yeah,
to be
but I mean, it's funny you mentioned Nelson Mandela. A lot of people think they call him the Nelson Mandela of Palestine, because he's the only one who's able to unify all factions. He's the only one who Hamas people would vote for him. The young people, the old people, even the PA people would vote for him. So he's one of the very few who can unite the people and have a united Palestine, not this huge rift that we've been having for the past 20 years.
Yeah, and I'm sure that's not related to why he's put into jail and the key thrown away.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, and the rift, Sawsan, you mentioned, is very intentional by the Israeli Zionist colony to divide and conquer, as they always do.
I agree, but I think the Palestinians, especially the PA, should have risen above it. I mean, the divide and conquer is an agenda that so many countries, colonial countries, they adhere to it. But I think especially the Palestinians, they should not have fallen into that trap.
I agree.
Should rise above it, and older people are calling for it. When we go lobbying here, the first thing they tell us, whether in Parliament or in the EU, whatever, get your house in order first. Okay, we listen to you. Who's going to lead Palestine? Palestine is divided. So, they are also working against us, who are trying to do good for Palestine.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there is a way in which you could say the PA has been severely compromised by Israel over the years as an ongoing agenda to make sure that they continue to sow that division.
Of course, I mean, the PA has been subcontracted to the Israeli occupation, and still the Israelis are not happy with them. So I mean, come on, you should just
for sure, but it needs that kind of visionary.
You've lost everything already, including your own people.
Yes, well, after Mandela, there have been a series of very poor leaders in South Africa who did not follow through with that kind of leadership. So I think it is very important that starts from the top. And so I really hope, you succeed in getting Marwan Barghouti out of prison.
I mean, we're trying, we're lobbying here in Washington, we're trying to talk to all the key people. But,
Yeah.
we presume that the West actually want to do good for Palestine. Oh, yes, let's have a unifying leader. They all have their agendas, and it suits them to have someone, that's malleable and that can be a sort of puppet for them.
Yes, absolutely. But it's good to see the way films, spread into political activism, helping other artists. And on that note, I also wanted to mention a big thank you for getting Hani, your son, to help us clear Palestinian music for Polarized, which was our last feature, which has a Palestinian family in it and a Palestinian.
Yeah.
Because through that, we were able to support, in a small way, some Palestinian artists like Dana Salah, Therese Slayman, DAM, Abe Batchson, a whole host of people. So all of these things have a ripple effect. So thank you very much for that too.
No, you're welcome. But actually, I mean, music plays a big part, and especially the last 2 years, you've had a lot of Western musicians produce songs for Palestine and even other Palestinian songs and songwriters, and so there's been like a whole plethora of new Palestinian music to do with liberation and freedom and all that.
Yeah,
exactly. And Shamim gave Hani a very difficult task of very interesting songs to clear. He managed to clear all of them for us, except for one. I think they wouldn't give, but everyone else did. So thank you.
Okay, that's good to know.
And Sawsan, let's talk about the Galilee Foundation, which you started. You've been leading it since 2007. It's a close cause to Shamim and myself. We love it. We support it. And education has always been very important to Palestinians. Could you talk about your foundation, the Galilee Foundation, the mission and its importance?
Sure. I mean, when I left Quds Medical School, I believed in a one state. And so I started looking at the Palestinians of 48, and I realized, the poverty rate was like, 60%. And even though the image of the diaspora of the 48ers are like, oh, they're so much better off than the West Bankers, they live much better. And maybe, they live better in terms of there's no checkpoints, there's no everyday bombing and retaliation. But they do live as second-class citizens. There is a very high level of poverty. And it's a very complex existence because, like I said earlier, you're meant to be a citizen of a state. The state hates you. They consider you the enemy. Your loyalty is to Palestine. At the same time, you can't be vocal about it. It's a very complex sort of existence. So I wanted to support the Palestinians there because they were really the forgotten ones. Everybody knows about the needs in the West Bank, and they are great, and we still support the West Bank. And so we started this, the Galilee Foundation, which would focus only on education. And our core program was to give scholarships to students to attend universities in the land. Now, I know a lot of, people would tell me, oh, we don't want to give these Palestinian students money to attend universities in Israel. But to me, this is keeping them on their land. And if they are part of the system, then, you educate so that you empower them and they can work the system from inside. A few years ago, there were at least 13 Knesset members in parliament. So, Arab members. So to me, because I believe in one state, I want to empower the young people there so that they are ready. Should there be a state, should there be a political process for them to be ready and to make a big difference in society. And I am a total believer in education. You really can change lives and can change futures through higher education. And this is how I co-founded the Galilee Foundation with Dr. Marwan Bishara, who also, is originally from the 48ers, and he knows the landscape, he knows the people, and we work closely with the Arab Culture Association, which is based in Haifa.
Yeah, and not only that, I mean, Shamim and I have sponsored student.
Yes, you guys have been amazing, great supporters, and you've even sent us more supporters. So thank you for that.
No, our pleasure. We really believe in what you do. And I love also the education is very important for us, but also I love that you've fostered a community and the graduates stay in touch and they start learning about their history and culture, because often they're erased and eliminate as Arabs and not as Palestinians. So you've given them that pride in rediscovering their culture and their history.
Yeah, I mean, our scholarship is a very special one. We don't just, give educational scholarships. They have to do extracurricular activities alongside it. So we take them on tours of the lost villages. It's about also reinforcing the identity, which you're not allowed, to even think about. They don't teach Palestinian history in schools. They don't teach you the Palestinian politics or about the towns or villages or anything to do with the national Palestinian identity. So we give courses and workshops to go along with the scholarships with that. And also we have volunteer programs for the community, like with Adala and with other Palestinian not businesses, but NGOs inside Israel. And so we find it's very important. And, sometimes we have the Palestinians in Israel connecting with Palestinians in the West Bank, and they find that quite an experience because, they don't get to see each other often.
Yeah, and everyone, please look up the Galilee Foundation if you're looking to help support anything Palestinian. It's especially in those times, I think it'd be great.
Yeah, actually, now a few years ago, we extended our work into the West Bank. So we have a program and we support students at Al-Quds University. And the last 2 years since the bombing of Gaza, we've been working with local organizations who do work in Gaza. And we have our fundraiser coming up on the 8th of May. And, a big chunk of the proceeds will go to Gaza.
Yeah, amazing.
Yeah, no, that's great. That actually answered, because I wanted you to elaborate on that. I wanted to ask you a little bit about changing that narrative within the world of the scholarships, which I think you just spoke very eloquently about, the difference it makes to the students' own perceptions beyond their actual university education of living as a Palestinian Israeli citizen.
Yeah, it's important to keep reinforcing that identity, because everything is geared in Israel towards the Judaization of the Arab community. Golda Meir once said that when they told her, what will you do with the Palestinians? They don't say Palestinians, with the Arabs in 48, because first of all, they want to keep it general, that there's no Palestinian identity as such. What will you do with the Arabs who stayed in 48? And she said, oh, the old will die and the young will forget. So, it is our duty not to make the young forget. But actually, it makes me quite happy to see the young in the UK. They are so aware. Some of them are, more active than the parents' generation. They're aware of the history. They're aware of the activism. They know what they need to do. And they're quite savvy at what has to be done. So it's been quite inspiring to see all these young people who know who they are, who know where their roots are from, and who are working towards an independent Palestinian state. Whether it will happen in my lifetime or not, I don't know. But I mean, it's nice to see all these young people working towards it.
And I love how you bring also film and your philanthropic work. I mean, we did a polarized charity screening for the Galilee, which was hopefully successful.
Thank you. That was quite good for us. It was one of our more profitable screenings.
Oh, good. I'm glad, Sawsan. And then also you've just screened No Other Land in London, the documentary that marked the first Oscar for win for a Palestinian. And as you said earlier, despite Hollywood's pro-Zionist stance, this film did break through, thankfully. But for me and for many others, Basil's story and his lived experience is a bittersweet in terms of the victory, because it seems like the message got co-opted by the liberal Zionists, and there's a lot of drama going on behind, in front and behind the scenes. So what are your thoughts on that and the impact?
Yeah, I mean, I'm actually very clear on this, because I have a few friends who said, oh, we have reservations. You know what? Let's not look a gift horse in the mouth. Basil worked hard for this documentary, but the Israeli guy, Yuval, he spent a lot of time with him. He wanted to show the world the misery of the Palestinians. Now, I was at the Oscar ceremony. I happened to be there with something else, nothing to do with No Other Land. There was a standing ovation. There was sympathy. There was a lot of applause. And for the No Other Land to make it to the Oscars, it's already a big deal. So, it's no other Palestinian documentary has done it. Granted, it's a very good film. It's very challenging to watch, really difficult. But I feel it doesn't matter if, Yuval is Israeli Zionist or not, but he helped to get the film there. He was co-director. He put himself not in danger, but he was hassled by the Israeli army. And so a lot of the Palestinians are saying, oh, we don't believe in it. Why not? It brought so many people to see the misery of Palestinians. There was no victory for Basil there because the victory maybe was just, winning the Oscar, but his life is miserable. And the Oscar has not changed all that. If anything, he's had more hassle with the Israelis. And if anything, Yuval has had a lot of hassle from family, from friends, from his own community. So the Palestinians have to appreciate. I mean, a lot of people they criticize him for his speech. Oh, why didn't he mention genocide? Why didn't he did mention about Gaza. He also had to mention about October 7th because he is Israeli. But he's done his duty. He got the film this far. Basil spoke about his part and about the misery, about the inequality and all of that. So everyone does what they can, but you can't expect everything from this guy, Yuval, because he's already being harassed and he's been vilified by a large part of his community. So I think, no, I admire him for putting himself out there. We cannot expect him to be lobbying like a Palestinian would, but I feel he's done quite a lot to expose the challenges and the misery of the Palestinians, whether in Masafa Yatta or in other places. I think it highlighted what is happening at the moment. And for me, that's very important. And I'm glad he did it, whether he's a liberal Zionist or not. It's, I just feel he made a huge difference to our cause.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that viewpoint, because I can understand both sides of it, but I really wanted to know what your thoughts were.
I mean, I can understand the criticism, but I just don't agree with it, because for me, the end result is what matters. The film got to the Oscars, a lot of people got to see it, a lot of people voted for it, which means there is a shift in public opinion, which means people are able to see a different narrative. And that is an achievement in itself.
There is definitely, thank goodness, a growing solidarity with Palestine amongst even the most unlikely quarters now, through protests, through boycotts, through support for what people, as humans innately feel is a terrible injustice. And
sure.
this is,
I mean, Israel is winning militarily, but I think they've really lost the people. Unfortunately, the governments are against us, but the people are with us. When will that people tip the balance? I don't know, but I hope it can be done soon.
Well, that's another question for you, is because it is important, if the pressure does not keep on the governments, and I think they're surprised that it's been going this far and this long, then that balance will never tip. So it is important to keep that going. So what do you recommend as other ways? I mean, we all make films, we write books, we do various things, you have your charities. What other actions do you think everyday people can take if they want to kind of participate a little bit in the Palestinian cause and fight against this ethno-supremacy idea?
I think, we have to keep doing more of the same, but even more. If you're young and you've got courage, go for direct action, go block arms factories, do like that guy who, climbed up on Big Ben with a Palestinian flag, and, but that's not for everyone. If you're able to donate to charities or volunteer or donate to films that will make a difference, or, join in cultural events, or, even if you're a fashion designer, you can, or have an inroad into fashion, you can do, I want to show you this Pakistani designer. She just did this. I'm not advertising, but I mean, it's amazing. She's done all the towns of Palestine on this scarf. And she sells a lot of Palestinian merchandise only just to promote the cause. And she donates to different charities, and, people, you can print your own t-shirt, like saying, don't be a colonizer, and only the colonizers and people who know about the cause, or, like this, somebody gave me this t-shirt, Rafah, You know, it says liberty walks without soldiers.
Yeah.
It's a very powerful sentence because, you know, the right-wingers and the militants tend to be pro-Israeli, and everyone who is humanitarian or, you know, sort of on the left or center or recognizes, you know, the humanity in other people, they tend to be with us. And you cannot be a good human being and not support the Palestinian cause. And unfortunately, we have to keep trying. I mean, I have to give you an example. In the US, Sarah Friedan, she did the documentary Lid with Rami Younes.
Yes, we saw it.
Forever, her father was PEP, Progressive Except for Palestine. This is a PEP in the US. It means, sure, Black Lives Matter, human rights, justice. When it comes to Palestine, it's a complete blinkering, as if the Palestinians are not human, because Israel has managed to dehumanize them for so long, and they've claimed the narrative over what Palestinians are meant to be like. And when Lid came out, he saw the film, and he started changing his mind a bit. So this is where the power of film, whether documentary or feature, can really play a big role. And like I said, if you don't have a budget to invest in films or books or cultural events, you can do something small fundraisers, join a protest, print a T-shirt. I mean, I was given this, I don't know if you can see it, the Hind Rajab Foundation. Check them out. There are a bunch of lawyers. This was done by a young man. He produced his own stickers, put a QR code where the funds go straight to the Rajab Foundation. They are lawyers who go after Israelis who have fought in the war in Gaza. So everyone can do, you know that expression, you can't help everyone, but everyone can help someone. And I really believe in that there is always something that you can do. And, you know, I have to admit, there are days when I'm really despondent and I think, what's the use doing education and charity and films, whatever, you know, we're being killed. Now, you know, the ethnic cleansing is a possibility, which, you know, a few years ago was not even on the radar at all. But, you know, one has to keep in mind that you have to keep going. And in this life, you do what you do. And I keep remembering that story when I was young of this young boy who was walking on the beach and a whole bunch of starfish washed over the beach. And he started picking up one, putting it back into the sea, one putting it back in the sea. And this old man told him, why are you bothering? There are so many. And he said, yes, but I can make a difference to this one and this one and this one. And I think this is how we have to work. We know, whether we think we're losing hundreds of thousands of lives or lives being destroyed, we just have to focus on the work and try to help a little bit wherever we can.
Yeah, the only thing necessary for evil to triumph is for good men to do nothing.
And women.
And women.
I love that.
It's a very old quote, but we take it to be everybody. Yeah.
And who's the quote by, Shamim?
I'm not sure. It's attributed to Burke.
Yeah, I remember. But this quote, I mean, the irony is it applied to the Holocaust. This quote came out after the Holocaust, and never again came out the Holocaust. And now we are seeing the Holocaust of the Palestinians. But I still think, and I do have hope, I'm a great believer that the Jewish voices, the good Jewish voices that are with us, and the young people who are living in the diaspora within the States or the UK, they can make a difference to the governments and to the political process in our cause.
I agree. And you know, the Hind Rajab Foundation, they're amazing. As you say, Shamim and I started sponsoring them also not long ago. And it's just all these little things really help to make a big difference. Also, you mentioned the Pakistani designer. Is it ANZ?
ANZ, yeah.
Yeah, ANZ.
Check her out. She's on Instagram.
Yes, we have. Well, yeah. So her cousin is married, who's an actor, is married to Brooke, who did some songs for Polarized, and we licensed her songs.
Yeah.
It's
you
very
see, when you're humanitarian, it becomes a small world, and you're all interconnected, whether in fashion or film or music or whatever, because you know we're all striving towards a better world, and definitely for better conditions for Palestinians.
Exactly. And as you say, you know, we're Palestinians in the diaspora, we're privileged, we have a responsibility to take action. So does everyone else, I think. You don't have to be Palestinian. And like you, I believe solution-wise in a single democratic, decolonized state from the river to the sea, irrespective of your religion, ethnicity, equal rights, justice for all, right of return, as recognized under international law. But Sawsan, how can we get that vision that's much needed now to be achieved in this lifetime, not, as you say, in 100 years or whatever?
Do you want the pessimistic or the
No, positive, optimistic.
You want the optimistic or the realistic? Okay.
Whatever you like.
I'm on two minds in this one. The pessimistic part of me thinks with this particular Israeli government, you're not going to get anywhere. You know, and like I said, if they are really going for ethnic cleansing in Gaza, which is very possible at the rate they're going, and they've started a sort of ethnic cleansing in the West Bank, there's already like 40,000 people have been driven away from their villages. What the Israeli government has done, so that not to look like the army's doing it, they've unleashed these violent settlers onto the Palestinian villages, and it's ethnic cleansing, you know, not in an obvious way, and the whole world is focused on Gaza. So I think if they do manage the ethnic cleansing, then, you know, that would be not the end of that, because there will always be a military struggle, there will always be political struggle. The optimistic side of me thinks the Israeli public should step back and look and think, do we really want to live in a perpetual state of war? We've dehumanized the Palestinians, but they've also dehumanized their own children, their own young soldiers who are 18 and 19 standing at checkpoints ready to kill at any moment and being so mean. I mean, they also have to look, is this the future that we want for our people? So hopefully this crazy government will disappear, Netanyahu will fall, and the Israeli public will come to a conclusion that they cannot live occupying a whole nation or to keep on killing a whole people for the next decade or so. So I'm just hoping that they will come to that conclusion and to say, maybe in time there will be a de facto one state, because if they don't ethnically cleanse them, they're going to be there. And eventually it will become a one state, and they will be more accepting of each other. I mean, with the Palestinians, before they used to be much more hardline, saying, no, this is our country and whatever. But I think the key to it is for Israelis to recognize how the Israeli state was created in the first place. It was created on the corpses of Palestinians. They won't say that. They say, oh, it was a war and we won it. What we have to keep in mind is that, no, there were always Jews in Palestine. Every time there was a pogrom in Europe, Jews came to live in Palestine, in Syria and Iraq, and would have been wonderful to have multi-ethnic, multi-religious communities in the Middle East, Jewish, Christian, Muslim, and others. But Zionism changed all this. The Zionists came to Palestine with weapons to dispossess and displace the Palestinian people, versus prior to that, Jewish communities would come to live in Palestine and other Arab countries, but they lived in peace. So there's a difference between Palestine being a homeland for the Jews versus a Jewish homeland. And Mamdani said it best, you know, and I really believe in that. Palestine could have been and should still be a homeland for the Jews, for the Christians, for the Muslims, and for other religious minorities. Whether the Israeli public will ever accept that solution, I'm not so sure. But there is a group called One State, where it's made up of Palestinian and Israeli academics, intellectuals, and activists. And they are trying to expand, and they are trying to promote that idea. But I think at this moment, both people are so traumatized, especially the Israelis. They're just so blinkered and so focused on October 7th, they cannot see beyond anything else. And you know, this trauma, they have to come away and then judge how things should be. Yeah. For their sake and for ours.
For sure. Where do you hope to make the most impact in your future work on Palestine?
I think, you know, I'm going to keep doing what I believe in. I think education, because you're able to give a better future to people, you're able to give opportunities, you're able to give a life. And also, ideally, I'd like to continue in films, because I can see they've had impact. And we've changed narratives, we've changed opinions, and And so I'd like to continue to do both. I would like someone else to take over the fundraising because that's really hard work. It's whether it's pitching for films or fundraising for the charity, and even though you're not doing it for yourself, it's still tough work, and you know, and especially when you get rejections, it's not easy. But you know, if you believe in the work and you know it's not for yourself that you're raising the money, then you actually have no choice. So and then the few wins that you get, the few victories, they sort of give you more energy to they give you a boost to carry on and to think, yes, you know, this was a mini victory. I can do that again. So you just have to keep going in what you do.
Yeah,
absolutely. And I keep telling Shamim, every film fundraise, every whatever, it's like a startup. You're starting again. Doesn't matter how many awards, how much, you know, accolade you've had, how many fans you've built. It's always starting again. It's like another start.
Yeah, and it's a painful process because whether you're having a fundraiser, it's so hard to get there. But once you know, you get the money and you're able to distribute and see how many students you've educated or what difference you've made to that community, or that the satisfaction is incredible. And the same with films. It's a hugely painful process, but once you see it on screen and you see the effect it's having on people, it's really nothing equal. There's no feeling like it that you think you've made a difference.
Yeah, absolutely. And we love all that you're doing because it's hitting the emotional, the intellectual, the impact. You can measure the impact and feel it and make a difference through the arts and through education, which is amazing.
And I'm in a lucky position where I'm able to sometimes overlap our film projects with like a Galilee screening fundraiser for this film. So it's nice to be able to have the two overlap.
Yeah, no, it's amazing. And Sawsan, what upcoming projects related to Palestine besides the Marwan Barghouti that you're excited about that you can share?
I mean, the Marwan Barghouti documentary, it's a few years old now, but the campaign is new. I've just become executive producer on a documentary about these two Gazan journalists who end up leaving, but it's their journeys, and it's called In the Presence of Absence. They've done a lot of filming, but they're still, you know, still in the process of the production is still going on, and we still need to edit and all of that. But they're also trying to raise funds for it. I mean, like I said, it's all painful process. And there's another Syrian documentary that I might be involved in. And there's like a couple of things it's too early to talk about, but it's all quite exciting stuff. So, but I'm hoping this documentary will be a good one. And also with Anne-Marie Jasser's film, there's also you know, that I'm really excited about that one because, you know, like I said, there's nothing like it that has been screened by a Palestinian filmmaker. So that would be an exciting film.
Very.
That's wonderful. Are there any other, we talked a lot about films, are there any other films or books or other resources that you would recommend for people who want to find out more about Palestine in general?
I mean, for people who don't know enough about the Palestinian, you know, question or conflict or cause, I find the 2-3 best books, the Ilan Pape one, The Ethnic Cleansing of Palestine. And there's a book that I read many years ago. It's very old, but I thought it's a very good book called The Controversy of Zion by Jeffrey Wheatcroft. I don't know if it's still in print, but it's a really good book. It's a good read. And the last one I read was called Our Vision for Liberation. And it's edited by Ramzi Baroud and Ilan Pape, but it's made up of a whole bunch of essays by Palestinian intellectuals, academics, lawyers, and it's how they see, and there's some poetry in there. It's a really wonderful book. So people should check that out. And in terms of film, I mean, there's just so many out there, you know, it's...
We'll let them start with your films, Sawsan.
Yeah, I mean, it's Salt of the Sea is excellent, even though it's very old. When I Saw You, but you know, still one of the most effective ones as well, The Present, which was Farah Nabilsi's 24-minute short film, which I had nothing to do with, but I think it's a brilliant film. And that one, I remember the New York Times came out with a full page and the title saying why Biden should watch this film. So,
Wow.
it's so that, it has an effect. And also the teacher, I mean, the teacher is almost, it's based on a kidnapping of the Israeli soldiers. So it's very close to what's happening now, except of course now things are much worse. But it's a great depiction of reality. And I have to tell you something about the teacher. When we were pitching it to these sales agents, they said to us, "Oh, we're not sure it's realistic because Israel is a democracy."
Oh my God.
I'm like, what? We said that the reality is much harsher on the ground, but
Yeah, that's Zionist Hezbollah for you, and
exactly.
propaganda. Yeah,
Yeah,
sadly.
exactly.
Sadly. And Sawsan, any final thoughts or messages you'd like to leave with our viewers and listeners to take away from today's conversation in case we didn't cover it?
I think we've covered mainly everything. I think, if you have funds you can spare, give them to charities, join films, theater, whatever cultural events are there to promote the Palestinian cause. And don't be afraid to speak out. I know everyone's afraid to lose their job or they're not in a position to support Palestine, but now there are, legal entities who will defend you if you lose your job, who will defend you if you're unfairly arrested. So I think it's important to keep speaking out for Palestine, to, join the protests. I know one time I thought, oh, what's the use of these protests? Nothing's changing. But actually, Bas al-Adra, in the Q&A during No Other Land, he said to us, please keep protesting. It gives us hope when we see you in the outside, in the diaspora, making the case for us, protesting, coming out for us, speaking on our behalf. So I think everyone has to keep on doing what they're doing and try to go beyond the comfort zone. I mean, that's, by speaking out, by not being afraid. That's the main thing. And not in a violent way, just to try and talk sense into these people who are still Zionists. And to me, I believe Zionism has hijacked Judaism and it's put the Jewish people in a terrible position where they've made them liable for atrocities committed in their name. And many of them are standing against this. But unfortunately, you still have some Zionists who support the state and what it's doing. So, we just have to keep working towards justice and human rights and the humanization of our people.
Yeah, absolutely.
What a lovely message to end with. I don't think there's anybody who's ever stood up for something, had integrity, fought for human rights that regretted doing that. So good words to end with. Thank you, Sawsan.
Thank you so much for having me.
Such a pleasure. Such a pleasure. Thank you so much. And your dedication to justice for Palestine, everything you do for the film industry is so much appreciated.
Thank you so much. I hope I can continue to do all I can.
I have no doubt that you will. I don't think it's in your nature to rest very much.
And you do more than most, Sawsan, so it's amazing.
No, we all try. We all do what we can. But thank you so much. It's lovely to see you guys, and I hope to see you soon in London.
Absolutely, absolutely. And Shamim, do you want to wrap up?
Yeah, just to say thank you to everybody listening. Thank you for joining us today. People-powered media is the new alternative to controlled legacy media. So if you enjoyed this episode, please take a second to hit the like button, to share it with friends or family, and to subscribe. Those engagements really help to amplify the voices that are dedicated, as we said, to justice and humanism. Thank you again to Sawsan Asfari, and over to Hanan.
And stories and representation matter. Stay informed, stay engaged. Above all, take action, as Sawsan said. In solidarity, see you next time. Sawsan, thank you again for your support to the arts, education, all the difference that you make to Palestinians and young people's lives on the ground. And your tireless activism for Palestine is truly inspiring. Shukran and thank you.
Thank you so much.